Hi, and thank you for listening to Dream 10X Radio, where we interview people attempting to live extraordinary lives. Our twofold purpose is to both direct and inspire people bold enough to do the same. Dream 10X. Face your fears and make your life count. Hey, Dream 10X land, it's your boy JC.
And Dr. Kibble.
How are y'all doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. Today, we are going to do a quick review of the Philip K. Dick book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And I don't, after reading the book and thinking about that title, I still am not quite sure where that came from. But Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? That's the name of the book. Philip K. Dick. Have you ever read any of his books?
I have not read any of his books.
You've watched some of his television shows.
I have. And I have seen Blade Runner.
And we've watched Blade Runner too, yeah. Kind of comparing it to this book. It's a great book, a lot of fun. And watching the movie, too, the combination of the two provide a really cool mythology for kind of the intersection of technology and where the future might go. The future in this book is not a great place to go, however, but there's a lot of interesting technology that's kind of fun to flying cars and cool cities and stuff like that, at least in terms of what Ridley Scott kind of envisioned in the movie.
Didn't it take place in 2021?
It took place in 2019.
2019, okay.
That time frame. So this book, the time frame for this book is about right now, interestingly enough.
Where's my flying car?
And so what happens is, that's what everybody's asking. They promised us flying cars, but there's no flying.
I was picturing the Jetsons,
Yeah, we're way behind in that vision, but it's coming along. People are working on flying cars, but anyway. The backstory for this is, World War Terminus is what they called it, World War III. Big nuclear holocaust occurred and just wiped out all the life on planet Earth except for most of the humans. There aren't any animals left to speak of, really. And there are still a few humans left, but I think the United Nations, or whatever the global governing body was at the time, was encouraging everybody to leave, to emigrate to Mars. And in exchange for agreeing to leave Earth to go to Mars, they were promised an android to help them out, to kind of be their automatic helper. Wouldn't
like
it be
Rosie
nice?
and the Jetsons. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nice to have some extra help around the house, but not like me or somebody you didn't have to pay. Somebody would just do whatever you do. Wouldn't that be awesome? So that was a good carrot that they were offering people to leave Earth. And the stick was the radioactive dust that just covered the entire Earth at the time. And so everything was just radioactive and it was nasty and not a great place to live. However, some people just didn't want to leave good old Earth. And I'd probably be one of those people who stuck around.
Yeah. So
that's kind of the backstory. Philip K. Dick was a UC Berkeley graduate. Wrote a ton of books, a lot of science fiction. He also wrote Man in the High Castle, which is a really good show, if you haven't seen that. And this book came out in 1968, and so it paints a picture of what I guess he thought might be today, and thankfully it's not. And thankfully we don't have the technology that he says we would have at this point. And so just wanted to talk about kind of the top five takeaways that I had from reading the book, and then we both saw the movie, so we can kind of compare and contrast the two. The movie Blade Runner was based on this book, by the way, Ridley Scott, and Rick Deckard, the bounty hunter, was played by Harrison Ford, and Roy Beatty, the android, was played by Rutger Hauer. And then you had Daryl Hannah, who's playing the other android, Pris Stratton. And then there was another android, I can't remember her name. But in the book, there's like 6 of them. And what these androids did, they killed some humans to escape their quote-unquote slavery, human slavery that they were under on Mars, to come back to Earth so they could be free, ironically. And so at the time, the humans on Earth had a system of finding these androids, because apparently it happened on occasion, finding these androids and terminating them, or killing them, basically. because they weren't really alive. They're androids. And so Rick Deckard was one of these bounty hunters whose job was to find these androids and terminate them. And he collected a paycheck based on how many androids he would terminate. And so that was kind of the story of this whole thing. And so you've got these 6 androids coming to Earth, and then you got the bounty hunters, looking for them and trying to terminate them. Mm-hmm. And so one of the interesting things I pulled out of this story, one of them, was the whole concept of immigrating to Mars and being encouraged to do so by getting a free android.
Yeah.
And so immediately I'm thinking of Elon Musk and how, you got SpaceX and they're building rocket infrastructure to take humans to Mars. We're building this technologies. We're building a whole ecosystem of technologies, rockets and catch up and whatever else that help make life on Mars better. And Elon Musk's company is even coming out with an android. So it sounds a lot like what was in the book, going to Mars, get a free android kind of thing. So I thought that was weird. Like Elon Musk as the emigrate ambassador to Mars was kind of a weird segue with this book. Anyway, the second thing that I thought was kind of strange, interesting / whatever was the mention of cod pieces. So that's something you don't hear or think about much, but cod pieces used to be a pretty prominent piece of clothing.
In Red Fair, we do. Yeah, it's pretty normal.
And they came out during the Middle Ages. Yeah. And we read about cod pieces in our episode 56, where we talked about the Plantagenets, that book that we read about how England, the Plantagenet kings kind of helped form England, and cod pieces became a thing of what do we call it? Fashion statement during the time. And so now in the book, cod pieces are a thing again, except they're made out of lead, and the reason they're made out of lead is to help protect you from all the radiation that's all over the place. So I don't know, what's old is new again sometimes. Please visit our sponsor, Viking Rows, at vikingrows.com. Viking Rows provides free indoor rowing challenges to frustrated Vikings. Challenge yourself by rowing around Cape May Island, or doing the Head of the Charles Regatta, or even rowing from the Canary Islands to Antigua. All you have to do is connect your Concept 2 PM5 Bluetooth monitor up to your computer, laptop, or Android device for automatic workout tracking and logging. That's Viking Rows at vikingrows.com. Real life got wiped out, and so somehow humans survived.
Did they talk about how the world ended in this?
The World War Terminus.
Was it like a nuclear bomb?
It was
or
a whole bunch of everybody just shot. They don't even remember who launched all the stuff or why. They don't remember. It's they just woke up one day and everything was gone.
Okay.
And here they are in this nasty radioactive environment.
Okay.
But there are a few animals, real animals around, and only the really wealthy people can actually own real animals. Like Rick Deckard's neighbor owns a real horse, and I think they have it up. It's hard to envision what actually they're talking about in the book. There's some weird things, but they live in an apartment, and I think his neighbor has a horse up on the roof of this apartment, and
poor horse.
And Rick has an electric sheep. He can't afford a real animal, so he has an electric sheep. That's one of the things that didn't come out in the movie, is this whole concept of there aren't any real animals, and the real animals are coveted. And real life is coveted because it just doesn't exist anymore. But the reality is, if all of these animals didn't exist anymore, there would not be the interdependent fabric of life to support humans.
Yeah, that's true.
Humans would not exist. So this book may, help paint a picture of what could be in the future. However, I don't think any life would exist on Earth if we had that kind of a war that wiped out all animals. Humans wouldn't exist either. So I just thought that was really creative way of talking about this type of post-apocalyptic future, in that we wanted animals, we wanted life so much that we created electric animals to help fill that void in our lives. And so John Isidore, who in the movie was J.F. Sebastian, who was the bioengineer, but in the book he just works for a vet. He's kind of like a vet tech assistant, and the vet tech is they only deal with electric animals, and so he just helps like collect broken electric animals and brings them to the shop, and they try to fix them and stuff. But in real life, J.F. Sebastian is a bioengineer who like creates all these weird creatures that live in his apartment. So in the movie he's a little bit smarter, but in the book he's not a very smart guy.
Okay.
All that to say is that, animals are life. Life is a really important thing, which takes me to another point. Why would humans want to kill the androids when they came to Earth?
They only live 4 years, right? You said?
They only live 4 years.
So they're going to die anyway.
They're going to die anyway. So that was one of my questions.
Unless it's for parts. It could be for parts.
Well, I think it was more out of fear. My guess is out of fear. They don't really say why the need to kill the androids. And like Cindy said, they die in 4 years because the engineers who built them couldn't get the cell division right. Like we talked about with in the previous podcasts, Becoming Batman and Chasing Captain America with the Paul Zare books, that our cells have a Hayflick limit where they can divide up to 50 to 60 times throughout our lifespan. And that cell division is what, we replace old and dying cells with new cells. And that's what allows us to have the longevity that we do. And then when we reach that Hayflick limit, we can't repair our bodies anymore, and we eventually die. Well, the androids, the engineers couldn't get that cell division right, and so that's why they die after 4 years. So why did they kill them? And I think the reason they needed to kill them or terminate them, was because of how well they mimicked humans. And if they were able to mimic humans so much, they could also replace them. And in the book, the androids took over a police station. They created a fake police station. And Rick Deckard was part of the police force as a bounty hunter. And he got put in prison by an android in this fake thing, this fake police station. And he was all confused because he'd never heard of this police station, and he was part of the police force, but he'd never seen any of these police. Yeah. So it was kind of a foreshadowing, I guess, that they could create a parallel human environment that would totally fake out other humans, and they wouldn't know it was fake. And that, along with life was so precious, real biological life was so precious to everyone. I think they just felt the need that we don't want these anymore. We want kind of a Luddite sensibility. Let's get rid of this technology in favor of the real biology. That was the only thing I could come up with. So why kill these guys? So I think that was one of the reasons. As opposed to on Mars, they were actually kind of your slave. They would help you do stuff, but on Earth, we had to get rid of. Other interesting takeaway was the Voight-Kampff test, which was a test administered by the bounty hunter to the androids to try to figure out whether or not this android that was in front of them was a real human or a machine. And the way it worked was it would kind of measure biometric responses to certain types of questions designed to emote some kind of emphatic response in the android or human. So humans would typically have a more emphatic response to certain type of questions. Empathy, emphatic, I think that's the right word. Whereas androids would not have that response. And so this new model that came out of the Nexus, the Rosen Corporation, or in the book it's called the Rosen Corporation. In the movie it's the Tyrell Corporation. But these guys came out with a new Android model called the Nexus 6, and they were even more astute at mimicking humans, and so it was harder and harder to tell whether or not an android was a human or not. And so this Voight-Kampff test was anyway. The test is kind of similar to the Turing test. Alan Turing was a mathematician in the 50s who famously came out with the Turing test, which was a way to interact with a computer or something using text over a network. And if you couldn't tell that the thing that you were interacting with over the network was a human or not, then and it was a machine, then that would prove that it was an intelligent machine.
Wow, that's crazy.
So and there are other tests as well. So we're already we have for decades been trying to figure out a way to measure and kind of test whether or not a machine is intelligent or not. Mm-hmm. So this is thinking of how this book came out in the 60s, 68-ish, something like that. It was very, forward thinking in that regard, that this is going to be a big thing. And I think that test is probably very important idea moving forward. How are we going to vet whether or not we're interacting with a real human or a machine?
Mm-hmm. It's true. Yeah.
And with ChatGPT again, and other AI technologies, that testing is becoming more and more prominent. How do we tell if writing was written by a computer, if it was written by a student? How do we tell if this art was created by a human?
The
or a
ChatGPT,
machine?
for example, is only as smart as the input that it's receiving. So if you're having a conversation with it and you're teaching it wrong information, how can it really validate and verify? So then it spits the wrong information back to other people, and then that becomes belief. So does that become the new reality?
Well, if it's spitting out wrong information and you can tell it, a human can verify that, that's bad information. It's a bad machine. It's a bad machine. It's not a human. It's easy to tell there. So the other weird thing is if it's so precise that it's never wrong, then that's another way of telling that it's a machine, because humans are fallible. We're always wrong. We always stumble on
that's
things.
A disconnect right there. So if we're saying that the machine is giving false information and therefore we know it's a machine, yet humans are fallible, so it's giving false information.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point. I don't know. Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah. So void comp, and then that was all 5 of my.
All right.
That was all 5 of my.
And I killed the conversation. That's how I roll.
So this book was really good. I liked reading some science fiction for a change instead of a business book, and it made me think a little bit about the intersection of technology and war and the future, and it's not all good. It doesn't seem like it's all that cracked up to be sometimes. And sometimes I wonder if we really need all this technology, because look at what people are dreaming what the future could be. And I don't know. It's an interesting fantasy book, but I don't want it to become reality. I don't want us to go there. So it always makes me, books like this always make me think of I really want to read a better narrative of what the future could be. Who's got a better narrative? Can anybody recommend a science fiction book that has a great narrative for what the future could be? Seems like all the sci-fi technology movies and books about the future have such a negative connotation. We're always fighting machines, and we almost lose and almost get wiped out, and there's a world war and all that. Where's the good narrative? Where's the positive narrative that people can think about? Well, Star Wars a little bit, but even those movies are fighting Darth Vader. There's always the myth.
There's always the fighting.
There's the
and Star
Joe
Trek
Campbell.
too. Star Trek at least has one united front on Earth at least, and then so on Earth at least it's a positive culture.
Star Trek is a pretty mostly positive sci-fi genre that it was a lot of fun to watch. I mean, they always came up against bad guys, and that's
but that's when they're exploring the universe. At least on Earth, it's a positive space,
and even that was fun, like Wrath of Khan. Like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, this post-apocalyptic future is just, it's too much. I don't want it. I don't want nuclear war, holocaust, or anything like that. So back to the business books. I also finished reading The Hard Thing About Hard Things, and this was a great book about how to become a CEO.
Ooh.
And we'll read this. We'll talk a little bit about this in the next episode.
Looking forward to that.
And then finally, I can't remember how I stumbled on this book or learned about Frank Hasenfratz, but this book is fantastic, and I love reading about his story. And I was sad to learn that he just passed away, but what a great story! What about Linamar up in Canada, and looking forward to talking more about this book as well in the future.
Awesome.
Finally, Wanted to talk about our software as a service for indoor rowers, frustrated Vikings, vikingrows.com. We are selling hoodies, and this is one of the hoodies that we have in our store.
And t-shirts and tank tops.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But here's a real life example, and I'm wearing it as well.
It's lightweight. I like it.
vikingrows.com/store. And I think you'll like them. They're a little bit light, but they're cool.
I like it. It's a good like fall, spring jacket.
Yeah. So thanks for watching our episode 58, and we will talk to you next time. Over now.
Bye.